A very good morning, children. Hope you have understood the word called as ecosystem, and also we have divided the ecosystem and also habitat, isn't it? So habitat is completely different from the ecosystem. So when you're talking about the ecosystem, we talked about the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. So what are biotic factors? Which has life in them. What are abiotic factors? Which doesn't have life in them. So what are biotic factors? Examples of biotic factors are plants, animals and microorganisms. When you come to the abiotic factors, we discussed about the air, sunlight, soil and water. So that is how ecosystem will consist of the biotic factors and also the abiotic factors. So now we'll keep this abiotic factors aside. Okay, we'll keep it aside. Now today our topic is the interdependence among the biotic components. Now we are learning a new word, that is interdependence. Now what does this word interdependence mean? Okay, depending on one other. That means one organism is dependent upon the other organism. For example, if you take a deer, right? Is it dependent on the other things or not? Yes, it is dependent on the plants. Okay, they are dependent upon the plants. If you take a tiger, is it dependent on some other organism? Yes, it is dependent upon the deer. Okay, so each and every living organism which is living on the earth is dependent on one another. That's why we talk about the word called as interdependence. And the topic is interdependence of or interdependence among the biotic components. Interdependence among biotic components. So now you understood the word what is interdependence, right? And then what are biotic components? Which have life in them. So plants, animals and microorganisms. So how these all are dependent on each other, or dependent on one another. That is what we are going to see in this particular section. Okay, children, shall we go ahead with the topic? Okay, children, if you look on the board, okay, I have written some names like tiger, bird, cat, dog, deer, snake, rabbit, carrots, plants and nuts. Now all these are the biotic components because they have life in them. Okay, carrot and plants and nuts and all, they belong to the plant family. So they have life in them because they are growing, they are reproducing, right? So they have life in them. They respire, they prepare their own food material. So that's why we can easily say that they have life in them, right? So that's why they are the biotic components, right? So what are biotic components? Which has life in them, So tiger, deer, snake, bird, rabbit, dog, squirrel, cat. Do you think all these organisms have life in them? Yes, they all have life in them. That's why what we call them as? We call them as the biotic components. Now we'll see how they are dependent on each other. We'll see the interdependence, right? Now do you think they are dependent on each other? We'll see how. For example, if you say rabbit. Rabbit is depending on whom? Rabbit depends upon the plants, isn't it? Rabbit depends upon the carrots. Am I right? Okay. And now squirrel depends upon the nuts. So you can see here, eagle depends upon the rabbit. Eagle depends upon the squirrel, isn't it? Okay. Now the deer will depend upon the plants, and the tiger depends upon the deer. Okay. And the dog depends upon the rabbit, The same dog depends upon the squirrel. Cat depends upon the squirrel. Okay. So like this, can you see the interdependence here? Can you see how they are dependent on each other? Like this, you can see several organisms depend on the other organisms. Like no, for example, the snake is dependent upon the rabbit, and you can say the squirrel is also dependent upon the carrots. So they are each, see here, if you see this particular chain here, each and every organism is dependent upon the other organism. Like no, the plants, like no, the animal which I have written here, the plants and animals, they are dependent on one another. They are dependent on one another, right? So that is how we can say that there is an interdependence. We can say that there is interdependence among the biotic components. So among the biotic components, there is interdependence. Understood, children? Shall we go to the next paragraph? Okay. So now here, children, we will talk about the ecosystem. Okay. Now, ecosystem is nothing but the living organisms present in them. Now, all these living organisms, especially we are talking about the biotic components, right? That is plants, animals, and also microorganisms. So these are the things, these are the living organisms which are living around us. Now what is the basic thing is that they have to survive. They have to survive, right? Isn't it? So how they will survive? Only if they have energy in their body, they can survive. If they don't have energy in their body, can they survive? No. So each and every organism depends upon the energy to survive, to live. Now, where do they get this energy from? What is the source of this energy? Now, the source of energy is the food. The source of energy is food. So, only through the food they eat, they get the energy, isn't it? Now, if there is no food, do you think you will have the energy? You will get the energy? No, we cannot get the energy. Only through the food we can get the energy. Now, we will take one example. We will take one example here. That is, we are taking a deer here, right? Now the deer is depending upon the plants, isn't it? So it is eating the plants because what does it require now? Energy. So it cannot get the energy on its own. It cannot get the energy on its own. So nothing is there in its body to give it energy. So it has to take something from outside so that it can get some energy. So now what it is taking from outside? So it is taking some food in the form of plants. So it is eating the plants so that it can get some energy. So because it is eating the plants, okay, which in the form of food, it is getting the energy. Otherwise, do you think the plants will get the energy? No way. So the deer will never get the energy if it doesn't eat the plants. Because it ate the plants, it got the energy. Okay, now you will keep this point aside. I'll come here. Now you take a tiger. You take a tiger. So now tiger cannot eat the plants. Okay. Now these plants are there and there is a lot of energy in the plants, and now the tiger cannot eat the plants. So now what it will do is it will eat the deer. Do you think tiger will get the energy? Yes, definitely tiger will get the energy. What is the reason? Because this deer is eating the plants and getting the energy. So now whatever the energy is present in the deer, when tiger eats the deer, the energy will get into the tiger. That means tiger is also depending upon the deer to get the energy, some organism to get the energy. Now, even though tiger is depending upon the deer to get the energy, it is indirectly depending upon the plants to get the energy, because it is taking the energy which is in the deer, but that energy has come out from the plants. So indirectly, it is directly depending upon the deer, but it is indirectly depending upon the plants for the food material, because if there are no plants, the tiger will not be able to get the deer, and when there are no deers, then the tiger will die of hunger, isn't it? So that means they have to depend upon the plants. Okay, children, keep that in mind. So children, in the last two examples, we were talking that, okay, the deer is depending upon the plants for the energy, okay, for the food and also for the energy. Okay, right now even the tiger also depend upon the deer for the energy. Okay, now how these plants are getting the energy? Okay, how these plants are getting the energy? So Now we'll come to the actual part of the story now. Plants, again, they have to depend on some other things, right? So plants are not able to produce, okay, plants can prepare their own food material, but not everything on their own. It has to again depend on some other factors. Okay, now we say that sun is the major source of energy. Sun is the major source of energy, because if there is no sunlight, there is no energy at all on the earth, because of this sunlight, the plants are able to prepare the food material. Just take some of your plants and all, no, potted plants, and keep in the cool or keep in the shade where there is no sunlight. Do you think it will grow? Do you think the plant will grow? No way. The plant will not grow, because what is the reason behind that? Because this plant needs sunlight. This plant will need sunlight. If you keep it like that under the shade, it will dry up and it will die, because there is no sunlight. Only in the presence of sunlight, the plants are able to prepare the food material. Okay, so that is why we say that sun is the source of energy for all the living organisms on the earth. Whatever the living organisms are there on the earth, from microbes to man, each and every organism has to depend upon the plants for the food, and plant is depending upon the sunlight for the food. Okay, not only sunlight, but also it depends upon the water, and also it depends upon the carbon dioxide, which is nothing but the air. So for the water, for the air, and also for on the sunlight. So these plants depend upon the water, air, and also sunlight to prepare their own food material. Okay, so they are depending upon the water, okay, and air, and also sunlight, and also on the soil. So these are all the factors which are helping the plant to prepare their own food material. So if these things are not there, the plants will not be able to prepare their food material, and the process by which they prepare their food material is called as the photosynthesis. Is called as photosynthesis. Here photo in the sense here light, the light which is coming from the sun. Synthesis here to prepare. So how the plants are able to prepare the food material? Through the light. So they are able to prepare the food material with the help of the light, and that's why we call the process itself as the photosynthesis. Okay, now if the plants are able to prepare the food material on their own, okay, that means plants will have the food which is required for all the living organisms. Now we talked about the tiger, isn't it? Now the tiger cannot eat the plants. Okay, it is a carnivore, so it cannot eat the plants. But then how it will get the energy? It will depend on the organisms which depends upon the plants. There are some deer, there are some other organisms which are herbivorous in nature. Okay, that means they only depend upon the plants for their food. So now what the tiger does is they depend upon these organisms so that they can get the energy, they can get the food. Ultimately, the major reason is that they have to survive. If the tigers have to survive, they have to depend upon the plants. If the lion has to survive, they have to depend upon the plants. So you take any organism, if they have to survive, they have to depend upon the plants, because plants are the source of the food, right? Or plants are the source of the energy. And what is the source of energy for all the living organisms, for even plants also? Sunlight. Sunlight is the major source of energy for all the living organisms which are living on the earth. Okay, children? Now see here, children. Now where is the complete energy? It is in the plant. Okay, it is in the plant. Now I want a snake to get the energy. I want the snake to get the energy. Now the snake will not directly depend upon the plants. That means now this energy which is present in the plants should travel towards the snake. Okay, so whatever the things which comes in between, the way energy moves from one organism to the other organism is termed as food chain, is explained by our ecologists in the form of food chain. So what is food chain? It is a way the energy travels or the energy moves from the one organism to the other organism. Now we are taking the example of a plant here. We are taking the example of a snake here. Do you think the snake will directly depend upon the plants to get the food? No, it cannot depend upon the plants to get the food. So then how they will get it? Now let me tell you like this. Okay, now that is through the food chain. Now what is a food chain? Now we see here plants are there, right? Now the plants, okay, for example, are eaten by a grasshopper. Okay, now what is the energy which is in the plant comes into the grasshopper, right? Now the grasshopper is eaten by the frog. Okay, now the energy which is in the grasshopper comes into the frog, and now this frog is eaten by the snake. Now what happens? The energy which is in the frog will come into the snake. So that is how energy travels. Energy moves. So the movement of energy from one level to the other level is called as the food chain. Okay, so now we can see that there are 3 levels in the food chain. How many levels are there in the food chain? There are 3 levels in the food chain. So it like the food chain are in 3 levels. Okay, now we'll see the first level. Okay, in the first level there are producers. So who are producers here? The organism which prepare the food material are called as the producers. Okay, without depending on any other organism, they are called as the producers. Now these are nothing but the plants. So in the first level there are producers which depends upon the plants. Okay, now coming to the second level. Okay, there are second level are called as the herbivores, and these are the herbivores which depend upon the plants. So the organism which depend upon the plants are called as the herbivores, right? So these herbivores are the organisms which cannot prepare their food on their own. Okay, they cannot prepare the food on their own, but whereas producers, they can prepare their food on their own. Okay, whereas when you come to the herbivores, they cannot prepare the food on their own. Okay, that's why they are called as the herbivores. Okay, and now coming to the third level. There are carnivores. Okay, so these carnivores are the organisms, okay, which depends upon the herbivores for their food material, for the food, and also for the energy. So in the third level there are carnivores which depends upon the herbivores to get the energy and also the food. Okay, so these herbivores and carnivores together, they are called as consumers. Here we are calling them as the producers, right? In the first level, the plants are called as the producers. Why they are called as producers? Because they are producing the food. They are synthesizing the food. They are synthesizing the food on their own. That's why we are calling them as the producers. But whereas when we come to the second level and third level, these organisms are not producing the food. They are consuming the food which is prepared by the producers. That's why these are called as the consumers. Okay. So now these are the 3 levels. So at every level, if you take the first level, second level, or third level, there are decomposers. Okay, I'm writing here. There are decomposers. Now, what are these decomposers? Okay, whenever these organisms die, when a plant dies, when the leaves fall down, when the animal dies, Okay, now that is the dead material. Okay, the decomposers, they feed on them. They feed on the waste materials of the plants and animals. Whatever the waste which comes out from the animals or from the plants, these decomposers, they will feed on them and they will decompose them. They will completely degrade them and they will add the nutrients back to the soil. Now just for an example, let me tell you that now there is a deer. Okay, there is a deer. Now what happens if the deer dies? The deer will have lot of nutrients in it, isn't it? Lot of nutrients, lot of minerals, lot of salts, okay, carbohydrates, glucose, fats, okay, gases, everything will be there in the deer, right? So when the deer dies, these decomposers such as bacteria and such as fungi, what they will do is they will decompose it, they will degrade it and add all these nutrients to the soil. Okay, children. So again, now the same soil, like no, it will be used by the plants to grow. That is how the cycle will start again. Okay, so that is okay. This is what is about the 3 levels of the food chain. Okay, and these decomposers are also called as the recyclers. They are also called as the recyclers. Okay, why they are called as recyclers? Because they are starting the cycle once again. So what are the nutrients are there in the deer and all, they came into the soil. Again the plants will grow there. Okay, again they will be eaten by the herbivores. Again they will be eaten by the carnivores. And when carnivores die, again they will be degraded by the decomposers. And again the soil, the nutrients will be added back to the soil. And again after adding the nutrients back to the soil, again the plants will grow from there. So that is how they will degrade, that is how they will start the cycle once again. So this is how, you know, the 3 levels of the food chain are, along with the decomposers at every level. So that is how we come to the end of today's session. And if you did not, I hope you understood all the points and all which we discussed now. If you really have any doubts, you can always text me or just feel free to text me. Okay then children, so see you tomorrow with a new topic. Until then, take care and have a nice day. God bless.